Now, speaker, as you share I statements and talk through this, make sure that throughout the thing that you recognize that your reality and their reality is going to be the same, but the narrative or the story you tell about the reality is not the same. And welcome to another episode of The Counseling Experience. Dr. Matt Eschler, your relationship fitness coach, here for you. Now, tonight, I want to talk about one of the most basic foundation skills. We've mentioned this quite a few times, but there's some real basic skills associated with this one that I think everyone needs to be reminded of. Many of you are good communicators. Many of you are incredible communicators, even with other people. But when it comes to your lover, your spouse, the person you spend the most of your time with, many of us become defensive, flooded, agitated. We do things that we normally wouldn't do in a relationship, especially with maybe an acquaintance or a person that we're just meeting. And so I want to talk about communication between partners. And so this is a skill, by the way. Communication is a skill, which means it can be developed. It means that there's always room for improvement. So no matter where you're at on the 1 to 10 scale of communicating, if you're a 3, you can always develop it up to a 5, and then a 6, and then a 10, then a 12. If you're a 1, you can always get better. So no matter what, you want to work on your communication skills throughout the course of your life. Now, some basic foundation principles are to be honest, direct, kind, and thoughtful when you communicate. I just want you to think about that, just how much sense it makes. Honest communication is necessary. Being kind to one another, making sure that you're thinking the most positive and best of the other person as you possibly can as you communicate. Even if it's someone you're at a little bit of a war with, you want to think kind thoughts about them so that you can lower your frustration level, lower your blood pressure, lower your heart rate, and really communicate with them. You want to be direct. Don't beat around the bush a whole bunch. Don't always couch things so carefully. Be direct, but kind, and be thoughtful. Think about what they're in need of. Think about some of the goals that they might have. Think about some of the results that they might want, because you'll be a better communicator if you do. So here's some skills. I want to talk about 7 skills, and I'm going to run through these relatively quick, as they're mostly a reminder for you that you can write down little notes to yourself as we go. Get your notebooks out that you use whenever you listen to these relationship fitness podcasts, and take a couple of notes. So skill number 1, set aside time to talk. Make that time often enough that you can keep up with your person, the person that you spend the most time with, the person that you want to spend your life with, your spouse, partner, lover, whatever you have going. You want to take and set aside enough time. Remember the 3 mandatory meetings? You got the date night, couples council, and family night. Those are all meetings set up specifically to connect and to communicate and to practice this with each other. Also, each day, think about the crossroads that you come to. Like when you come home from work and you're both hitting the living room at the same time, or you're both hitting the living room for the first time after a long day at work, make sure you spend 8 seconds in a hug, a 6-second kiss, and then communicate about the high point and low point of the day. Maybe after dinner, have a little crossroads meeting where you just give each other a big hug and a kiss and talk a little bit about how the evening is supposed to go and what's going to happen after dinner. Pay attention to each other. Notice the connection or the level of connection. These are all skills that you can develop to know whether you need to communicate a little bit more, know that if you're doing a good enough job, or know that if you just need to maybe organize a little bit more alone time or downtime to talk. Number 2, when you are setting aside that time, when you do set aside that time, make sure you get rid of the distractions, like get rid of the screens. If you're talking with someone and you look at a text, even if it's just look and set the phone down, that's breaking the concentration. That's breaking your ability to show that you're a good listener, or it'll pause you if you're speaking. So as you are talking with your lover, as you're talking with your spouse, I would love for you to get rid of those all those distractions. I would love for you to learn how to live without that fear of missing out, causing disruptions in your talk time with each other. Now, the most basic couples communication process is literally, it's this easy. Partner A talks while partner B listens. And then after partner A is done talking and B finishes listening to that section, then partner B talks and partner A listens on the same subject. So each of you get a turn on the subject, one subject at a time. Couples, watch out for one issue becoming 10 issues. Like we're talking about maybe chores in the kitchen during the evening, and we've divided those up and we're having a little bit of a disagreement, or we're having a little bit of hurt feelings over maybe one of you not doing, perhaps the other one perceived you're not doing your share. And next thing you know, you're talking about who works the hardest and who got the most vacation time last year and who doesn't get the kids to help and who does. All of a sudden, we're talking about parenting, work outside of the home, work in the home, and are sad around chores not being either equally distributed or not being taken as serious by both. So you can only do one issue at a time. If you have multiple things to discuss, just make a list, cover them one at a time. As corny as it sounds, get your little notepad out and make a list of things you want to get to, but don't do them all at once. So here's skill number 3. So skill number 1, if you recall, skill number 1 is make sure that you set aside enough time to communicate. Skill number 2 is no screens or distractions. Skill number 3 is listener. Your job is to listen to understand, not listen to respond. You're not supposed to build a case to influence the other one while they're talking. You just simply listen to understand. I don't want you to mind read. And I don't want you to be asked to mind read. Don't assume you know where they're going. Don't assume this conversation is going to be like every other conversation in your mind that you've had with your partner. So what I'd like you to do is just purely listen. No building a case, no trying to influence, just listen. And as you're listening, I'd like you to listen to the words, the feelings behind the words, the tone of voice the person uses, the body language the person uses, the different things that the person shares, and I'd like you to mirror back to them what you got from the conversation. So ask clarifying statements, ask questions that are open-ended to get the person to talk about the subject that you're listening to, and as they finish, ask them if you understand them after restating in your words what you've heard. So listener, do you understand your job? Listen to understand, not respond. Don't build a case to influence. Simply listen to the words, feelings, tones, body language, gestures that is being used. Ask clarifying questions, and then when you're ready, restate what you've understood and get clarification from the speaker that you know what they're talking about. Now you just switch places. So the speaker, your job, number 5 skill, is to share your experience. Don't make blaming statements, make I statements. Now, I think you're a jerk, or I think you never help around the house is not sharing I statements. An I statement would be like, I'm upset about the chores that we've divided up. It doesn't seem like everything's getting done as we agreed. I'm wondering if you're taking it as seriously as I am. I want to talk about it. See, that's an I statement. You're being accountable for what you're saying. You're being accountable for how you're feeling. And you really are curious if your partner is taking it as serious. So you ask the serious question. Now, speaker, as you share I statements and talk through this, make sure that throughout the thing that you recognize that your reality and their reality is going to be the same, but the narrative or the story you tell about the reality is not the same. Let's say you are talking about chores and you can see that the trash hasn't been taken out, the dishes are still in the sink, and the back door is left open. So you know that things have not been done. Let's say that my reality is that my wife has done a terrible job. She never takes the trash out. She never does the dishes, and she'll come in a door and only half shut it so it blows open, and then like rodents and everything else comes in. Reality is, all I know is that there's trash in the trash can, dishes in the sink, and the door's a little open. I don't know anything else for sure. I might assume things. I might mind read. I might even think that, well, I've caught a lot of other times that she didn't care. But this time, I have to say I only know 3 things. Trash isn't taken out, dishes aren't done, and they're in the sink, and the door's a little bit open. Now, I need to go and ask clarifying questions. I need to go and talk with my partner about what I'm noticing. So the reality is the same, but our story, our narrative, we have to talk with each other about the stories that we're telling about the reality that's sitting in front of us. Many of you come into my office and make bold statements like, I already know where this is going. I already know what they're going to say. I already know they don't care. I already know they don't like me. I already know that they don't like me nagging them. What I want to invite you to do is try to not know so much. Try to know just enough that you can ask questions. And any mind reading judgment that you make, any assumption that you make, any assessment that you make should just lead to clarifying questions. Like, I'm worried that you don't care about the dishes in the sink. I'm worried that that's not part of what you really want to get to in the evenings, and so they're not going to get done. Am I right about that? I'm a little bit worried about it, and I just want to talk with you about it. And then I really listen, because that's what we do. We take turns. I'm hoping my partner would look at me and say, so what I hear you saying is that you don't think I'm taking dishes doing as serious as you do. So I would like you to own your feelings, be accountable, make bold statements that are clear, direct, friendly, and thoughtful. I'd like you to take turns and really listen to the other one, really listen to the intent, tone, timbre, listen for the frustration, the joy, whatever they're feeling, and then ask clarifying statements. And then remember, reality as a speaker, your reality is not your partner's reality. Your realities are going to be the same. Sorry, what's real and true is the same. The story you tell about that is actually more important than what's really in front of you. I want to get the story. I want to get understanding of where they were at. It might be that they've got a whole rationale for why things are going the way that they are, and we need to talk through that to get to agreements with each other. Now, once you each take a turn, it's super important to look at where you stand together and where you agree, because many times you'll agree on 99% of it. And then make agreements on where you disagree or where you're not on the same page to get to the same page. And these agreements are things that you can talk about in that couples council once a week to follow up on and see if they're working or if you need to redo them and make different agreements. Final one, number 7, compliment, don't criticize. Always talk with your partner or your person, talk with your spouse with like this knowledge that they are awesome. Talk to them in a way that you can compliment and see their greatness. Talk to them as if they're perfect as they are in the future. And what I mean by that is I know you don't want to hurt me, so I want to talk with you about this thing that's hurting me. I know that you would never be irresponsible because that's not part of who you are. You're not an irresponsible person. Now, some of you are thinking, yeah, but my spouse is irresponsible. So then you might say, you know what? I know that you don't have the same level of intensity as I do about certain things, and maybe I get a little anxious, but can we talk about blank? See, the idea is compliment. Make sure you build up. Don't tear down. If you lead with criticism, if you're always putting down, if you're always criticizing and pointing out the negative, you're eventually going to get tuned out. If you're building, complimenting, reassuring, and noting what people are doing that is working for you and correct, you'll always be listened to, and it'll be a warm, gentle, general conversation. So if you think through this lens, these 7 things, I want you to write them down. I want you to think about where you're at with them. Skill number 1 that you can learn is set aside time to communicate. Number 2, during that time, no screens or distractions. Number 3, listen to understand, not build a case to influence your partner. Number 4, ask clarifying questions to help you understand where they're at. Restate what you're understanding and make sure that they acknowledge that you do understand them before you take your turn to speak. Number 5, share your experience. Don't make blaming statements. Be accountable. This is your experience. Share that with them. Don't make blaming you statements. Say, this is what I'm noticing. This is how I see the world. Can you tell me how you see the world? Number 6, remember, reality is the same for everybody. There is a truth when you're looking at something, but the story we tell ourselves about that truth can be vastly different. And those stories are what we're arguing or talking about. Those stories are, if we understand your partner's story, you'll have more empathy, you'll be able to make more agreements, and you'll get along better. And if your partner really listens to you and understands your story, your narrative about the circumstance. And number 7, finally, compliment, don't criticize. Make sure you speak to each other's strengths and then gently sand down the weaknesses. There you go. There's some very simple communication skills that you can practice, and I'd love you to get going on it. Practice every night for 15 or 20 minutes and really get used to doing it. Thank you tons, and we'll talk to you again.